Wait.
Hello and welcome to NewsX World. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the China Report. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have just concluded their talks in South Korea, their first meeting in 6 years in China's Busan. Initial comments made by Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping hint that the recent frictions are normal for the two biggest economies of the world and that this meeting could prove pivotal in taking the US-China relationship forward from the recent turbulence. This summit is taking place at it's a high-security military base that's connected to the airport in Busan. The last time these two leaders met was back in 2019, and this summit is taking place at the end of a tumultuous year with a tit-for-tat tariff war and eventually a kind of truce. Any kind of deal will be welcomed given the disruption to the world trade by business communities around the globe. Among the key items of the discussion are soybeans, which the United States expects to export to Asian economies, including, of course, a huge purchaser, which is Beijing. Rare earth minerals are also have expected to have been discussed. We will, of course, bring you those updates when we get them. China, of course, being the second largest economy and the largest producer of those rare earth minerals, and recently implementing strict export controls in response to the United States' tariff upticks. Okay, we're now joined by Andrew K.P. Liang. He's a China strategist and he joins us live from Hong Kong. Andrew, of course, those talks have now just concluded. Now, there are many talking points that is yet to discuss. We have no information yet about if a deal has been reached. However, we are expecting that information very shortly. However, what are the possible outcomes of today in the best cases and, of course, the worst case scenario here?
Well, the talk was supposed to last for about 3 or 4 hours and it's now ended relatively earlier than expected, suggesting that maybe there are some intractable issues. Let's face it, it is not just a trade talk. It is no less than an existential contest between two rival powers on the world stage. The United States, there is a bipartisan consensus that China represents an existential threat to its global dominance, whereas China sees the United States trying on using any arsenal under the sun to thwart its legitimate rise as a powerful nation. And so both sides are using or weaponizing all arsenals, all tools under this disposal to act or counteract with one another. And trade is only one dimension. Let's not forget that only recently, a couple of days or even less than 2 weeks ago, the United States is imposing huge charges on the shipping industry. And of course, there is also allying with American airlines and on the military in the South China Sea, and more recently, along with the Netherlands, confiscating a Chinese semiconductor company headquarters in The Hague, in the Netherlands. Because that supplies a lot of chips around the world. So
Andrew,
I think there are lots of issues
Andrew, I do apologise at interrupting. We are bringing live visuals. We've just seen Donald Trump enter Air Force One. Neither Trump nor Xi have made any comments post these talks. That is, of course, unusual for Donald Trump to skip those press cameras, with both leaders making positive statements going into these talks. Donald Trump calling Xi a very tough negotiator, but also calling them very good friends. Xi saying that the United States and China should be partners and friends. Of course, Donald Trump's abrupt departure and the lack of comments of him towards cameras, that doesn't signal that these talks have gone that signals that these talks haven't gone too positively.
Well, as I said at the beginning, it was supposed to last for about 3 or 4 hours, according to the readout in the American press. But it's ended much sooner than expected, so it doesn't all go well. As I said, it is not just trade war. I think that the United States under Donald Trump still thinks that he can coerce China into submission. But China has now found a newfound confidence in counteracting Americans' unilateral coercive weapons, including even semiconductors. China is now developing its new AI chips. And there are other, as for trade, China is now pivoting towards the global south, which accounts, together with the emerging markets around the world, accounts for 58% of the global economy. So you can see that China has found a newfound confidence and capabilities to counteract against American coercion. But still, there are China hawks in the Trump administration, and Trump is always thinks that he can be the winner on all fronts. So it's the whole American geopolitics, body politics, is imbued with a sense of with this black and white, sort of a winner takes all kind of mentality. Whereas China, of course, that is more accommodative to a more constructive relationship. In other words, it's just like buying a product. The buyer gets something, of course, because profits, and the buyer gets the commodity or the product, and the seller gets profits. So both sides could win, but that's not the mentality defining this confrontation. The United States and a lot of the media channels in the West seem seized with the idea that it's either black and white, win or lose. But that's not on China's playbook.
Okay, Andrew, of course, we have 3 sticking points when it comes to today's talks, especially when it comes to trade. We have the issue of rare earths. We have the issue of tariffs, of course, soybeans, and even a possible TikTok deal. In your opinion, what could have been the biggest issue of contention when it came to these talks?
The biggest priority for the United States, for President Trump, is of course both the rare earths, because it's rattling the world's supply and value chains. It's hurting the United States military, because the military depends on a large extent to these rare earths, which find its use in high-tech military hardware like F-35 fighters. Apart from a whole range of military hardware. Secondly, is the soybeans, because it's affecting the Republicans' constituency supporting the Republican Party. China has always been the largest buyer in the world for these soybeans. Now, because of the trade war, China is diverting the purchase to Brazil and Russia, but that is on the soybeans. China could accommodate by just redirecting the soybeans, but I don't think that China is going to give up its countermeasure on semiconductors. He can relax or postpone it a bit, maybe for a year or so, but it's unlikely to relax or to give up its commanding heights, because that is seen as China's main defense against American coercion.
Andrew, we of course saw that Chinese and American officials reached a framework for an economic deal earlier this week. Could it have been a clash of personalities or in that meeting room today in South Korea?
Well, it's both personalities and also the national kind of trajectory. The United States has been the world superpower since the end of the Second World War. It's unlikely to give up that dominance or hegemony anytime soon. But after the Second World War, China played along with the American sort of dominance by joining the World Trade Organization. And the United States thought that bringing China to the World Trade Organization could make China more like the United States and also renegade China to Americans' leadership or control. But that is the rhetoric, or that is the perception. But in the end, the outcome is very different. China has grown stronger by joining the WTO as now the world's second largest economy. And by purchasing power parity measurement, China had already become the largest economy in the world. By this purchasing power parity. But in terms of military, and China's growing its military in defense of its supply and value chain in the South China Sea, is now the world's largest navy. So I think that the United States across the board is focused on containing China at all costs, especially under Donald Trump. So President Trump still thinks he can bend China's will, but obviously at this meeting, that may be less than what he expected, and hence the rather short meeting compared with the original expectations.
Indeed, and of course Donald Trump has threatened retaliatory tariffs on China as a response to the restrictions that Beijing has placed on these rare earth minerals. If he once again places more tariffs, triple-figure tariffs on Chinese goods, what could be further response from Beijing to this?
Well, if you could look at China's exposure to the American market, of course, the American economy is still the world's largest, but in terms of China's exports, it has now dwindled over the years from, say, over 30% to less than 10%, 10%, because over the years, China's now shifted or expanded its markets worldwide, including the Global South, including European Union, including a lot of countries in Europe, outside the European Union, to Latin America, to to Africa, to the Middle East. And so it's only 10%. And also the tariffs has been raised to 50% or more. At that level, it's not possible to do any business anymore. So even if you increase the tariffs to 1,000,000%, this is nonsense. It's only arithmetic. It doesn't make any sense. So whether 50% or 100% or 200% or 500%, 1,000%, it doesn't matter at all. And then I think China has now come to the realism that is now a contest of the century, and China is now finding its newfound confidence and is keeping its head down. And the recent blueprint for this next 5-year plan is all geared towards self-reliance, growing its own economy, and continue opening up of China to the world, and creating a world order more based on mutual benefits, win-win, as in the case, as I was saying, like the seller and the buyer of the product. Both sides can get something rather than one size winner takes all kind of mentality, which now characterize the whole American body politics.
And Donald Trump did say that some national security and geopolitical issues were going to be brought up during this meeting. Do you think they held any real weight when it came to those presidents being face-to-face with one another? Do you think that led to any tension in that meeting room, especially when it came to the likes of Russia, Ukraine, Taiwan, etc.? Donald Trump did say he was going to raise those issues.
Well, first of all, on the kind of national security mantra, that is totally, this phrase has been weaponized and it's been exaggerated. Sort of anything is national security. I mean, it's immigrants or soybeans or semiconductors or trade imbalance, anything can be weaponized. Anything can be hyped up as national security, and as forewarned by China's foreign minister spokesman many times. But as far as the other issues are concerned on Ukraine, of course, China is not fueling the war in Ukraine, but China has been and Russia have been a very close economic partnership in the sense that both economies are extremely complementary long before the Ukraine war, because Russia is the world's largest exporter of energy and agricultural products and China's largest buyer. This relationship has long been established, as I said, well before the Ukraine war, and China is unlikely to give them up because of Americans' coercion. This is quite unlike India. India only started buying huge quantities of Russian oil after the Ukraine war. But as far as the Middle East is concerned, of course, China wants peace, stability, so as to grow its markets worldwide, and also creating a more inclusive world order. So I think that there are a number of fundamental issues involved, as pointed out, an existential contest characterized as either the citizen's trap or the tragedy of great power politics, as some American intellectuals have stressed time and again.
Well, the reason I bring this up, Andrew, is of course because Donald Trump, prior to this meeting, had told the Pentagon to immediately resume testing US nuclear weapons, and of course, this followed China's decision to expand their nuclear stockpile. Of course, both leaders know about this. They were face-to-face with one another while these decisions were happening in the background. Do you think this could have had anything to do with this meeting ending early?
Well, first of all, again, apart from a trade war, apart from a semiconductor technology, ideology, it's also a war of words, a war of narratives. And of course, as far as the nuclear stockpile is concerned,
I mean,
the largest stockpile in the world is Russia, over 3,000 warheads. United States is slightly less, I think about 3,000, and China is only not nearly even 1,000. Anyway, I mean, these warheads are no longer the kind of yield characterized by the 2 atomic bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, as many hundred times more powerful. And then these start of stockpile can destroy the entire world many times over. So even you have 1,000, 3,000, 10,000, 100,000, it doesn't matter anymore. So this is, again, a war of narratives.
Yes, and of course, Donald Trump has also given South Korea permission to continue building a nuclear submarine in the region. How do you think Beijing is going to respond to that? And of course, that news came prior to this meeting as well. South Korea, of course, a huge ally of the United States, and also quote-unquote committed to maintaining a stable Indo-Pacific and maintaining against Chinese influence in the region. What would be Beijing's thoughts on that?
Well, as I said, I mean, this is also a very important dimension of the contest. The United States is rallying its allies, Japan, to a certain extent South Korea, and of course Australia, to contain China with the AUKUS nuclear submarine deal with Australia, and then bringing even the United Kingdom into the Asia Pacific, but also allying Japan, especially under this new leader Takaichi, and brokering a closer military alliance between Japan and South Korea. If you look at the map, Japan and South Korea are the north of the South China Sea, and Australia is down south. And in the middle, there is the first island chain centered in Okinawa, the second island chain centered in Guam, containing a lot of American assets. So, but as far as the submarines are concerned, of course, that has got to do with the atrophy of Americans' shipping industry. If we look at the shipping industry, which of course can build commercial ships as well as submarines, the capacity of China's shipbuilding industry can be illustrated by two key figures. China's building over 1,000, I mean, just for the sake of argument, 1,000 ships, compared with the United States, less than 10. So it's 100 times more capacity. And China and the United States are trying to rejig it and trying to regrow the shipping industry, but it's easier said than done because there is a lot of infrastructure involved, and skills, and technicians, technology. But for the start, the Trump administration is wising up to it. Is trying to form a closer alliance, and encouraging the Korean, of course, the Korean shipping industry is also very strong, to build submarines inside the United States. But that's only the first step, and it will take a long time. And also, the Trump administration wants to reshore manufacturing to the United States, without a regard to the huge difference in costs in terms of wages, in terms of other things, and he's using all tools under in his arsenal, including government subsidy, government direct intervention, slowing the American long-held ideology on intervention in the private sector to win, following more like a China step of state intervention. But anyway, this highlights the very systematic and also long-term strategic rivalry between the United States, and this rivalry is intensifying. It's unlikely to be settled in one single meeting, and then the idea that you can broker a deal within a couple of hours is now seems to have been shattered.
Well, yes, and Andrew, of course, we now know that Donald Trump has officially left South Korea and is now en route to Washington, which brings an end to, of course, his Asia tour. He started off, of course, in Malaysia, then headed to Japan, and then finished off in South Korea over the 4 days, concluding with that high-level stakes meeting with Xi Jinping. Along the way, he attended the APEC summit, where he met a abundance of leaders, including Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi, among many others, and he also officially signed that peace deal between Thailand and Cambodia. Andrew, just before we wrap up on this hour, of course, America and otherwise, of course, the United States see their influences in the Indo-Pacific as extremely crucial to their influence in the world. As Donald Trump departs for Washington, how would you analyze his longest trip since he has taken his office for the second time?
Well, the United States under the current Trump administration, and even under Trump 1.0, and that includes also includes the Biden administration, have paid much less attention to the Asia rather than concentrating on Europe because this is distracted by the Ukraine war and the Middle East. But now it's suddenly waking up to the importance of this region in the sense that for example, the ASEAN countries, the Southeast Asian countries, together with their trading partners, the so-called Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is the largest trading bloc in the world, accounting for a third of the world's GDP and a third of the world's population. And of course, of geopolitics in the region, which I've outlined, is increasingly of strategic importance. So Trump is trying to pivot again towards Asia, hence this Asian tour, and look at what kind of deals he's signing. Most of his deals are together with rare earths, but that is not a fixer in the sense that, yes, there are alternative supplies, large supplies in Australia, for example, but of course it's not a supply, is the refining capacity, which involve hundreds of different types of rare earth, and the refining processes are very intricate and very polluting. Nobody wanted them in the beginning, so they're lumped onto China, but now China has now mastered these processes, is now weaponizing it. But it's not easy just to say, well, I've got these supplies, but where you got the refining capacity?
Okay.
It'll take decades to restore it.
Andrew KP Leung, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here on NewsX World. Thank you for taking the time. And that is a wrap on the China Report today. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the globe. Thank you for joining us.